I've been doing videos since the shutdown, and I would say that 90% of the comments that I receive on my videos are overwhelmingly positive. And I have a small channel, I don't have that many followers, but the people that do regularly follow me are usually pretty positive and encouraging. I do get some criticisms though. The most common criticisms are either squat depth, bench press touch and go or bench arch, or the fact that I do deadlifts. I don't reset the weights. I do a lot of touch and go sets. And the criticisms are, well, how can you count those squats if they're not all to depth? Or how do you count that bench if you're not pausing it? Or, things of that nature. Like it's easier to do deadlifts if you do touch and go. And all of those are absolutely 100% true. So you would say, well, why don't you just only video sets where you hit depth every time? And I would say because it goes against my training. So the first thing I want to establish is what my training is. I am a power lifter, and I train specifically so that I can move the maximum amount of weight on the platform on competition day. That is literally the only thing I care about. On competition day, I have 3 attempts to do squats, bench, and deadlift. And on those 3 attempts, I want to be able to move the maximum amount of weight that my body is physically capable of lifting. And one of my challenges is me being in my late 40s. I'm as strong as I ever have been in my entire life. So strength's not an issue. But I've accumulated some injuries over the years, and my body doesn't recover like it used to when I was in my 20s and my 30s. So I had to try to find a way to minimize the massive amount of volume that I was doing in an effort to give my body the most recovery time possible. And I think that I've found a way that has been really working for me. And it's basically how I've been working out for the last, we'll say, year and a half. So what is my program? Basically, it is high intensity training. Not high intensity interval training, not to be confused with HIIT. Essentially, it is one working set to rule them all. If you can imagine boiling down your entire routine to one monster set. So we'll look at like traditional powerlifting programs like the starting strength 5x5, the Wendler 531. All of those have a volume programmed into them, and that volume over time, once you hit a certain level of progression, can be overtraining for older guys. It can be quite difficult to keep progressing with something like the 5x5 when you start getting into your late 40s, 50s. You can still do these programs. They can be especially beneficial to guys that are new to the sport. But when you get to a certain level, continuing to progress in one of these types of programs, it becomes really difficult. And for me, I found that a really good compromise was the Wendler 531, which I used for years. But even that, I noticed the amount of volume was starting to become really taxing, and it was a grind to get through all the workouts. So I started whittling down that program to its bare bones. But then you run into the problem where you're losing accessories, and you're losing a lot of what makes that program worth doing in the first place. And I had to figure out a way to keep progressing with the lowest amount of volume possible, and I really think I found a formula that works great. The formula is 2 parts, and it's stupid simple. The first part is the working set is the workout. Basically, you do your warm-up sets, you get up to your target weight, and you take that set to failure. That's your workout in a nutshell. The second part, which is just as crucial, is undulating periodization, meaning every week you rotate the amount of weight that you're going to lift based on a percentage of your 1 rep max. If you look at the Wendler 531, it rotates weekly. 1 week is your 5, which is 60% of your 1 rep max for sets of 5. The second week is your 3s, which is 75-80% of your 1 rep max for sets of 3s. Your third week is heavy singles, which is 95% of your 1 rep max for heavy singles. And then your fourth week's a deload. Well, basically I took that same schedule, and instead of doing 5s, 3s, 1s, deloads, I take the same weight I would use to do those workouts, and I just do 1 monster set to failure. And that seems to be working for me. It keeps the volume perfect. Now, the one thing you really got to bring to it, though, is you have to really apply intensity to that working set. So when I get up to whatever my working weight is, let's say this week it's 355 pounds on the bench, I need to take that set to absolute failure. I got to go until I can't press anymore. And that kind of goes into why I do the sets the way I do it. The criticism that's often leveraged against me is that, like when I'm doing squats, I'm not hitting depth on every rep. Well, why is that? Well, I got my target weight, we'll say 455 pounds on the bar. I need to hit it for a set of 10. Or 10's the target, but I want to take it to failure. So I always bury the first one. And I try to go to depth on as many of them as I can. But once it starts getting to where I can't hit depth, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep squatting. And if I have to cheat a little bit and squat an inch high, I'm going to keep getting those reps in. And those reps are where you're making your money. Those extra reps at the end of the set that you wouldn't have been able to get because you're not strong enough to hit depth, you're going to get a lot more out of it if you keep adding extra partials at the end of each working set. Does that make sense? So you grind out what you can grind out, and then you squeeze a few partials in at the end, and you take that set to absolute failure. That's going to pay dividends in the end, as opposed to not doing that. I think where a lot of guys on YouTube get it wrong is they compete with each other. So person X might do a monster set, like say a PR weight of, we'll use the number 500 on the squat bar for a set of 5, 10, whatever he's capable of. And his friend will try to beat that. And it goes back and forth between a bunch of different people, and it's, much fun is had by everybody. They talk shit to each other, they give each other crap if the form's not perfect, and since you are directly competing with other people, it makes sense. Obviously you don't want to do partial reps if you're trying to beat another person specifically. Then they see me do my sets and they get mad because they're like, who's this guy think he is? He's only doing half whatevers. And I keep telling them, like, I'm not competing with you guys. This is training. I'm training for competition. So why does it matter if I cheat on the last few reps? It doesn't, I'm not competing with anyone. For the life of me, it baffled me for so long why guys would get so irate when I would do my exercises the way I do them. And I couldn't understand, why they even cared. But after being online for as long as I have been and watching other small content creators, it started to make sense. It started to make sense because they're competing with each other, and it's like a little community, and everybody, kind of goes at each other. And I'm over here doing my own thing. All I'm doing is just showcasing my training for competition, and I don't really give a crap if someone can beat me or I can beat somebody else because I'm not competing with anyone else except for myself. But the downside that I noticed is that it appears to me that people kind of get trapped in this way of doing things that's so rigid that they're holding themselves back. I would notice that the sets they were doing, the exercises they were doing, they only performed them one way and there was no variation. And, of course, then you wonder why you're not making progress like other people. And everybody just kind of just says, well, it's because you do steroids. And that has nothing to do with the way that you train. So you don't like the way I train. You're not willing to try it. But then you won't give me credit for making progress. And even though I'm telling you what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, and how you could easily apply it to your own program, it's like, give it a try for a month. Maybe there's something to it. I'm telling you guys, this stuff works, especially for older lifters. Not every program works for every person, and finding something that does work for your genetic makeup and your abilities is always difficult, and it does take a lot of experimenting, and it's crucial to have, you know, a trainer or a coach or some other kind of expert that can help guide you through that. And YouTube has largely been that for me. This little experiment that I've been doing for the last year and a half has really changed the way that I approach my training, and it's been really beneficial for me. You know, I feel like I'm unlocking superpowers. The type of training I do, called high intensity training, not to be confused with high intensity interval training, that's something totally different, is nothing new. It's nothing I pioneered. I got a comment a month or so ago from a gentleman who said that no serious powerlifter trains the way you do. And I thought, well, do you know any serious powerlifters? Do you know any guys that compete? Because I didn't make this stuff up. I did boil it down to its simplest form, and I'm going to continue to keep trying to do that, to find an easier, more straightforward way of training. That's always my goal. But I didn't pioneer this stuff. Back in the day, there was kind of two schools of thought. You had your Arnold Schwarzenegger types, the a million sets of a million different exercises to absolute failure, and you beat your body into submission. And it makes sense because, you know, Mr. Olympia, your goal is physique, and you want to work every single muscle fiber in your body, and you want to, you know, cultivate that aesthetic look. But I didn't think that really translates to 1 rep max performance. Arnold obviously was strong. Yes, they are very strong. But if his goal specifically was to 1 rep max a lift, I don't think that his way of training is the optimal way to do that. The flip side of that was your Mike Mensers, your Tom Platts, those guys who basically do what I do. You know, obviously they did it better. And I'm still learning myself. But that's all I'm doing, is I'm taking that second school of thought, which is, instead of doing a million sets of a million different exercises, you pick a compound lift and you take that working set to failure, and you really just put everything you have into just that small window of training, which frees you up to do other things and recover properly. And that's kind of where I'm at. I'm in that second school, and I only have been training this way for the last year or so, and I'm still progressing. I'm still making progress. So is there something to it? You can leverage the steroid thing. I've told you guys a million times that I'm only on HRT right now, but people are going to believe what they're going to believe, and I'm not going to try to convince anybody anything different. As far as you're concerned, I am on a mountain of pharmaceuticals, and that's fine. I'm not even going to try to defend myself, because I've done them in the past, and it is what it is. But I'm telling you, even when I started testosterone replacement therapy and I did my cycle, when I was training my old way, I wasn't making significant progress. It was only when I started doing this interval training that all of my lifts exploded, and they continue to explode. I am the exact same weight I am today as I was a year ago. Right now I'm at 205, 206 pounds. So I have not put on any weight whatsoever. Matter of fact, I've gone down a couple of pounds, and my numbers are still going up. So you tell me, what is it? Now, the gentleman that introduced me to this philosophy of training, if you will, you all know him, Bobby Forever. And his YouTube channel is, I believe he changed his name to Gen X Power Numbers Guy. That's cute. And we are a team. And people often criticize Bobby because Bobby doesn't look like an elite level power lifter. How could he possibly know anything about training? And he's written a book. I haven't written a book. Have you written a book? He wrote a book. I bought the book. That's how I met him. It was $10 on Amazon. And it had some interesting things in it. And I reached out to him and asked him about it. And it turns out that's how I met him. He was available and he was willing to help me. And we've been kind of collaborating ever since. And I love the guy. He's been awesome for me. He's got a natural gift for programming. He always seems to pick the right numbers for me to work with, so I don't really even put that much thought into the numbers I'm working with. Bobby gives me my numbers. I try to hit the target. The next week, rinse and repeat. So I'm not even thinking about the numbers I'm using. He's doing it for me. All I'm doing is lifting the weight. It's awesome. It's an awesome arrangement. And I would highly recommend, reaching out to him and hitting him up. Because if it works for me, it can work for you. And that is, at the end of the day, the goal. The goal here is to try to get people to become more open-minded and try something new out. That's all I'm trying to do. Try what I'm doing for a month or two. And what's the worst that's going to happen? It's not going to work for you, and you can go back to your old way of doing things. But if it does work for you, imagine it. You've got a program that's simple, easy, you don't need a ton of equipment, and it frees up all of your time to do other things that you want to do in life. You don't have to spend all day in the gym. Or if you want to, if you're like me and you actually like working out, you can do that too. If there's any specific details you guys want to know, please feel free to hit me up. I'm more than happy to collaborate or do my best to help you guys out in any way. And I'm always, I'm not always available. I don't comment on every video. I don't spend every day online because of my schedule. But if you do leave me a comment, I do try to get back to all of them. So hit me up, man. And if there's anything I can do to help you, I will absolutely do that.
I hope you get hurt.